just a really emotional movie that I witnessed on a plane. I was doing a lot of travel this weekend and had downloaded some movies previously that I wanted to kind of watch, and then I ended up using the in-flight entertainment, and this one kind of came across, and I was like, you know what, I meant to see this movie in 2024, and I'm talking about Super Slash Man, the Christopher Reeve documentary. As you might know, and everybody knows at this point, but some younger viewers might not know that Christopher Reeve was the original Superman, right? Um, that came out in the 70s, and tragically, when he was 42, he fell off a horse, and it paralyzed him for life. And this documentary takes you through not only his rise to stardom and where he kind of came from and what he was like, but also his harrowing journey through his paralysis and through his life post injury. There are a lot of documentaries out there now. I feel like we are kind of in a era of taking people's real life stories and putting them on film and taking all this found footage of them with interviews and things that they did in the public spotlight and making a story out of them, right? The Christopher Reeve story is tragic in general. What they've done with this film is amazing, and it's heartbreaking, and it's will emotionally, I think I wrote down, it will emotionally rip your heart out. It's uplifting in moments. It's heartwarming in moments. There are honest. There are. It really makes you think about the contrast of him, of what he was in the public eye and what he was in private life, and makes you think about that comparison. This is a film from HBO Documentaries in conjunction with DC Studios and with CNN Films. And one of the reasons I kind of came to it in general was because they dropped the new Superman trailer. And I couldn't help but think the new Superman that's going to come out this July, the character was like, I was like, wow, this looks like Christopher Reeve, right? And then I remember they did this documentary. One thing's for sure: don't watch this documentary on a plane unless you're comfortable, as I was, crying multiple times in this documentary because it's so good, right? Not only does it just kind of show you the contrast of the person he was and the persona that he was, that he played this character that was invincible, that was saving the day, right? But in his personal life, especially post-accident, he wasn't invincible. He was living a life that was very fragile and emotionally, and he was dealing with such pain and stuff like that. And you don't think of those things when you think of Superman, right? And then you start seeing him in his everyday life, right? And the things that he does in his everyday life and what he was doing to not only help his own cause, but to help other people with the same condition, right? I'm not sure of the perfect way to say this, right? Same people to help people that are also quadriplegic, right? It's really inspiring what they did and how he documents in this documentary the trouble and the conflict and the ups and the downs, the peaks and the valleys that he experiences post accident, right? The way that they symbolize too him at the top of his game and him at the bottom of his game is that they intersplice this steel, like a man of steel, the statue of steel that's being kind of infested with kryptonite. So when he gets into a bad situation, whether it's pre-accident and he's dealing with emotional trouble in his life, or he's dealing with the cost of fame, or if he's struggling with being a person in the public spotlight, kryptonite erupts from this man of steel, this CGI steel statue, right, to kind of symbolize that he's going through a bad time. And when he rights the ship pre-accident, and he's feeling good, all of a sudden he starts looking more pristine. He's scratched up, but he looks a little bit more pristine. It's a very clever vehicle, a very clever way to depict emotional stability and emotional disarray at the same time using the same thing. It was really, really powerful. I didn't know much about Christopher Reeve before watching this movie. I knew about the accident. I've known he was Superman. Those movies, to me, I watched the first one a long time ago when I was a kid. To me, they represent a time where DC and other companies like Marvel weren't as commercialized, right? Like they were trying something new for the first time. And this documentary does go through that, right? Like it's not just so focused on what happened after the accident, but it focuses on also too like what it was like discovering him, right? Like they talk a little bit behind the scenes about making the first Superman. It does make you want to go out and watch those old films in preparation for the new one coming in July 17th, which, by the way, his Christopher Reeve's son is in. If you look on the IMDb page, he plays a TV reporter in the new one. It's also quite shocking to see Christopher Reeve's youngest son, Will Reeve. It looks staggering like Christopher Reeve. And one of the big things I think I took from this, and I said this before about persona versus person, right, and how different those two people can be. It is striking. Like I don't even like to call this a review of a documentary, right? But the documentary is so well done, right? The review is A+, go see it, go watch it. But they do such a good job exposing their real drama and the changes that happen in people and the support that they give and the sacrifice that the families have made to live with something as tragic as what happened to Christopher Reeve, and they show it to you, right? I mean, there's plenty of documentaries that I feel like could hide that kind of emotion, right? And they don't have to be that transparent. It reminded me of documentaries like the Michael J. Fox documentary Still, right? Where he wasn't afraid to show you the good times and the bad times, right? It wasn't one-sided. And seeing that portrayed in film was inspiring, right? There's other documentaries like Schumacher and stuff like that that do have a little bit of a veiled screen over them, right? Because they want to keep their privacy, and that's totally respectful, right? They're choosing to do a documentary, they're choosing to show what you want, but in this case, it's very raw, is what I'm trying to say. And they show you the good times, they show you the bad times. They intersplice it with voiceover from Christopher Reeve, so you are getting it straight from the source. It's not completely third party. It just makes you feel so inspired by what he was going through and what he continued to do, and his work in the foundation to try to make people walk again and live through and work on their paralysis to see progress made there is really, really inspiring. Also kind of tragic too that I didn't realize that his wife had passed on so quickly after the 11 years that Christopher Reeve was living post-accident, that she perished as well. So it's very, very inspiring. And if you do get the opportunity to go see it, watch it. Again, be forewarned, it is a very emotional journey through this movie. It is inspiring in so many different ways. And it makes you want to watch those Superman movies because they do have, I don't know how to quite describe the difference between the movies that were made in the 70s and the movies that are made now, but there's some sort of wholesome quality to seeing Superman then as opposed to its incarnations that it's had subsequently. So I wasn't too big of a fan of the Henry Cavill Superman with Amy Adams and Jesse Eisenberg. Like some of the casting I thought with Jesse Eisenberg was very strange. I didn't know how Lex Luthor. To me, it was hard for me to disassociate Lex Luthor with the creator of Facebook, with Jesse Eisenberg in that role. But they were dark. They were kind of like shot with kind of almost a gothic approach. The ones with Christopher Reeve are so bright, and they kind of have a little bit of, I don't want to say it's not as kooky as 1960s Batman, but there is that same element of how it's filmed and how it looks. There's a very quick clip in the documentary of Superman seeing an oncoming train come. And instead of it just lifting the train and putting on the tracks, he becomes part of the train track so the train can continue to go. It's that kind of ridiculousness that I think is missing from some of these superhero movies that have come out, where it's they stretch the boundaries of realism too much. I mean, that I think is missing from some of these incarnations to the film. But with this new one, I also want to kind of showcase a little bit here. If do I have it up yet? I don't think I do. This new cast here, David Cornsweet will be playing the new Clark Kent. Rachel Brosnahan will be playing Lois Lane, and we have Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. So that comes out in July 11th. Go see this documentary. I think it's really interesting to see this as a piece previously, as a piece to kind of as a side companion to see to the new movie on July 11th. I think it will be really interesting for viewers to see that. So go check out again, that's Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story, which came out in October of 2024. It's a beautiful, beautiful documentary.